Sometimes, betrayal comes from those we once trusted the most. This story tells of hidden passions and secret desires that gradually destroy a family. Lisa, the protagonist of this tale, finds herself caught in a web of lies and manipulation as the true nature of her husband and niece is revealed. Lisa, 38, always considered her life successful. She worked in marketing and still found time to care for her family. Her husband, Jonathan, 40, the head of a large company, appeared to be the perfect family man, and their 7-year-old daughter brought joy to their home. But for the past few months, Lisa had noticed that something was changing in her life. Lisa's niece, Emma, 23, had been spending more and more time at their house. After a difficult childhood, her father, Lisa's brother, was an alcoholic and unemployed. Lisa took Emma under her wing. Emma always admired Jonathan, often praising his success, openly expressing her admiration for how he built his career and became such a respected man. Lisa, feeling warmth towards Emma, didn't pay much attention to it for a long time. However, over time, certain details began to seem strange to her. She started noticing that Emma would talk about Jonathan more than anyone else. Emma insisted on ironing his suits, cooking his favorite meals, almost replacing Lisa in these tasks. When Lisa suggested ordering food, Emma rejected the idea, claiming that cooking for Jonathan was her way of helping. Lisa began to feel pushed aside in her own home. Stress at work, issues with their daughter, who was struggling to adjust to a new school, and constant household concerns led Lisa to brush off her worries. However, the tension inside her continued to build. She noticed that her husband was becoming more distant. One evening, while Lisa was ironing Jonathan's suit, she remembered that Emma had already ironed it with particular care. Lisa began to feel that her family was changing. Emma started spending nights at their house, using the excuse of helping out, even when her presence wasn't needed. One day, Lisa saw Emma and Jonathan whispering in the kitchen, thinking no one was watching. At first, she didn't think much of it, assuming they were discussing work or household matters, but the feeling of unease lingered. Lisa also noticed changes in her daughter. The girl had become more withdrawn, often unwilling to talk and showing signs of nervousness. Lisa tried to discuss it with Jonathan, but he brushed it off, saying it was normal for their daughter's age. But one day, Lisa found a drawing in her daughter's room that showed Emma and Jonathan holding hands. This incident made her think even more deeply. Lisa couldn't shake the thought that Emma and Jonathan were playing a double game behind her back. When she once again saw Emma serving Jonathan lunch with a smirk, meticulously prepared just for him, she realized these signs couldn't be ignored. With each new detail, Lisa's anxiety grew. Her mind began painting pictures of what might be happening between them, but she had no proof. Lisa decided to install a hidden camera in the house. She was torn with doubts, but her intuition told her that things weren't as simple as they seemed. She began watching their behavior closely. The camera became her last chance to uncover the truth that was tearing her apart from the inside. Now Lisa had to prepare herself to uncover the darkest secrets that would not only destroy her family but also lead to unpredictable consequences. After months of doubts and anxieties, Lisa received a strange, anonymous message. The screen of her phone displayed a short phrase, "Your husband is sleeping with Emma. You've lost." The text was blunt and shocking. At first, Lisa thought it was a cruel joke. But with each read, the words cut deeper into her consciousness, causing her even more distress. Lisa decided to ignore the message, but deep down, the fear began to grow. A few days later, Lisa started receiving mysterious calls. They came late at night, and every time she answered, there was an eerie silence on the other end. Lisa tried to convince herself it was just a mistake or someone's prank, but with each call, her certainty waned. The silence felt too deliberate, as if someone intentionally wanted to make her nervous. Lisa noticed another oddity. Her daughter had become increasingly restless. One night, she woke up to whispering and saw her daughter sitting on her bed, talking to herself. At first, Lisa brushed it off as typical childhood fantasies, but as she noticed this behavior more often, her concern grew. Her daughter no longer went to school with the same enthusiasm, becoming withdrawn and irritable. One evening, when Lisa came home earlier than usual, she saw her daughter sitting at the computer, quickly closing a browser tab as soon as Lisa entered the room. Lisa felt a strange tension but didn't question her right away. Later that night, after her daughter fell asleep, Lisa decided to check the computer. Opening the browser history, she stumbled upon messages Emma had been writing. In them, Emma openly discussed her feelings for Jonathan. She wrote about how much she admired him, how she dreamed of being with him, and how hard it was to hide her emotions. Lisa realized that things were spiraling out of control. She couldn't believe what was happening. First the anonymous message, then the mysterious calls, and now these messages, confirming her worst fears. Her world was crumbling right in front of her eyes. Lisa tried to talk to her husband, but Jonathan avoided open conversations, saying she was just tired and imagining things due to stress. But Lisa could no longer brush aside her anxieties. After yet another call, where Lisa once again heard nothing but heavy silence on the other end, she felt a strange whisper. The voice was quiet, barely audible, and the words were unclear, but the tone was threatening. At that moment, Lisa realized that someone was playing a game with her, preying on her fears and weaknesses. She didn't know who it could be, Emma, someone they knew, or even Jonathan. But one thing was clear. Someone wanted to destroy her life. Now Lisa stood on the edge. Before her, the darkest sides of her family were being revealed, and the anonymous threats and mysterious calls only added fuel to the fire. Her reality was turning into a nightmare, and she didn't know who she could trust anymore. Lisa couldn't shake her growing anxiety. Every time she closed her eyes, the same scene played out in her mind. Her husband Jonathan and her niece Emma laughing at her, their bodies entwined in intimate embraces. This dream became her constant nightmare, returning every night with renewed intensity. She tried to wake up, scream, break free, but the nightmare held her captive until morning. When Lisa woke up, her body trembled from the haunting dream. But the nightmare didn't leave her during the day. In the kitchen, preparing breakfast, she found herself glancing over her shoulder, as if expecting to see Jonathan and Emma. Everything seemed suspicious. Their conversations had become more hushed, their smiles more strained. Lisa felt like she was being pushed aside, but when she tried to bring it up, Jonathan reassured her that it was just the result of stress. He said she was overthinking things, but Lisa couldn't shake her doubts. Sleep and reality began to blur. In her dreams, Lisa saw Jonathan openly cheating on her right before her eyes. It wasn't just infidelity. In her visions, he admitted he had long since stopped loving her and now belonged to Emma. They laughed at her helplessness, taunting her. Each morning, Lisa woke up in a cold sweat, wondering if it was truly just a dream or if her subconscious was trying to warn her of something more serious. Her nightmares intensified to the point where Lisa began to fear sleeping. Jonathan, noticing her tense state, tried to convince her to see a doctor, hinting that she might be on the verge of a nervous breakdown. But this only strengthened Lisa's belief that her husband was hiding something. He had become distant, showed less care and attention, and his attempts to discuss her mental state felt like mockery to her. Paranoia started to consume Lisa's mind. She noticed strange things. Her husband's phone lying at a different angle than usual, his computer always closed when she entered the room. She began to wonder more and more. What if they were laughing at her and continuing their affair behind her back? One day, Lisa noticed a figure by the window, but when she rushed outside, no one was there. This incident only fueled her fears. Lisa started to feel like someone was watching their house. Every night, she heard footsteps outside the window, as if someone was sneaking through their yard. Once, she saw a shadow in the garden, a blurry figure hiding behind the trees. However, when she ran to check, no one was there. Lisa began to suspect that someone was stalking her, but she couldn't understand who or why. Her condition worsened, and now she saw signs of surveillance everywhere. It seemed like someone was watching her every move. Every time Lisa left the house, she felt like someone was observing her from a distance. She felt trapped, cornered. Jonathan, who had once been her rock, now felt like a stranger, distant and cold. His words and actions were increasingly filled with irritation and indifference. Lisa decided to talk to her daughter, but found that the child had become even more withdrawn. The girl often cried for no reason and refused to explain what was troubling her. Things in her daughter's room were in chaotic disarray, and Lisa found strange notes with nonsensical words that her daughter seemed to have written at night. Lisa began to worry that her fears were affecting her daughter. She sensed that the situation was becoming dangerous for the whole family. Now, Lisa stood on the brink of despair. Her mind was breaking under the weight of her fears and suspicions, but she couldn't find any concrete evidence to support her doubts. Jonathan continued to dismiss her concerns, convincing her she was just exhausted and imagining things. But Lisa was no longer sure she could even trust herself. Lisa realizes that her inner fears can no longer remain just suspicions. Night after night, the nightmares continue to torment her, and Jonathan and Emma's behavior becomes increasingly strange and distant. She feels like she's losing control of her life and knows she must take decisive action. After much deliberation, Lisa decides to install a hidden camera in the house to catch the affair in action. She chooses a spot in the kitchen, where Emma and Jonathan often retreat together after family dinners. 3 days later, nervously opening the footage, Lisa starts watching the recordings. Her hands tremble, and her heart pounds so loudly she can barely hear the sound of the video. At first, nothing seems out of the ordinary. The footage shows typical conversations and family dinners. But after a few minutes, Lisa notices strange moments. The looks between Jonathan and Emma become more intimate. One evening, Emma gently touches Jonathan's shoulder, and he responds with an affectionate gaze. This isn't just friendship, but what she saw next became a true nightmare. The camera captured a moment when Emma, waiting for Lisa to leave the house, entered Jonathan's office. In that room, Jonathan and Emma begin to get close. Lisa watches as her husband embraces the young woman, and her heart sinks. What initially seemed like a simple physical affair turns into something far more terrifying. Jonathan and Emma whisper to each other. Their words are unclear, but their tone and gestures are sinister. They're discussing not only their secret relationship, but also what they're planning to do with Lisa. Emma casually mentions, "Everything will change soon," and Jonathan agrees, nodding and saying, "You're right. It'll end soon. We have to be ready." Lisa doesn't understand what they're talking about, but one thing is clear. Their relationship has been going on for a long time, and they're planning something. Unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, Lisa decides to confront Emma face to face. On this day, Emma, as usual, visits and Lisa, gathering her courage, asks her to step out on the terrace for a talk. Emma, not expecting such determination from Lisa, initially tries to joke her way out of it. But under Lisa's pressure, her mask falls. Emma begins to speak with a coldness Lisa didn't expect. She reveals that her relationship with Jonathan started years ago, when Lisa was often away on business trips. Emma confesses that she had been in love with Jonathan from the start, seeing in him not only a strong man, but also her savior. At first, it was just a physical connection, but over time, their relationship became something more. Jonathan assured Emma that he no longer loved Lisa and that they would be together soon. Emma also claims that Jonathan has long planned to leave Lisa but didn't want to lose his daughter. So, his plan was to take the child, leaving Lisa with nothing. This statement struck Lisa like a blow. She couldn't believe that the man she had shared her life with and raised a child with could be plotting such a treacherous plan behind her back. Lisa spends the entire day in shock. Every word Emma said echoes in her mind. She realizes that everything she thought was real had been a lie. Jonathan wasn't just cheating on her. He had been systematically destroying her life, planning to take away everything she held dear. Lisa can no longer trust anyone, not even her own family. Lisa spends sleepless nights trying to figure out how all of this could have happened. Her mind is torn between shock, anger, and a deep sense of betrayal. She decides to dig deeper to uncover what other secrets might be hiding behind her husband's mask of perfection. Her decision leads to unexpected discoveries. One evening, she finds an old box of Jonathan's personal belongings stored in the attic. Inside are numerous papers and letters that Jonathan had never mentioned. Among them, she discovers handwritten notes and letters addressed to unknown individuals. These letters, which at first seem like simple business records, upon closer inspection, reveal a horrifying picture. In them, Jonathan repeatedly mentions a game, where he uses people like pawns, manipulating their emotions and actions for his own gain. With each letter, Lisa begins to realize that her husband wasn't just manipulating her and Emma. This was part of a much larger scheme. From the beginning, he had viewed people as tools to achieve his goals, carefully crafting his actions to appear innocent. As she uncovers more evidence, Lisa decides to examine Jonathan's electronic devices. Taking his old phone, which he hadn't used in a long time, she finds several video files. At first, they are just ordinary home videos, but one file catches her attention. It's a video taken a few years ago. Jonathan is seen laughing with an unfamiliar person, discussing some plans. They talk about Lisa. Lisa hears her name mentioned in the conversation between Jonathan and his colleague. They're discussing how Jonathan plans to win the game. He says that Lisa was always too trusting, too soft. There's a confidence in his voice, as if he's certain she will never be able to stand up to his plans. He mentions that his goal is to get Lisa to sign certain documents related to their joint business so that he can gain full control. Lisa continues watching and is confronted with a real nightmare. In one of the letters, Jonathan mentions Emma, but not in the context of recent events. He writes about her with cold calculation, as if planning her role in his game. This letter is dated several years ago, when Emma was still a teenager. Lisa realizes that their relationship had started long before she had noticed anything suspicious. Jonathan had systematically prepared the ground to manipulate Emma and use her for his own purposes. With each new piece of evidence, Lisa begins to understand the scale of Jonathan's manipulation. He had not only used Emma but also herself, assigning each of them roles in his twisted game. She recalls moments from their marriage that once seemed like minor misunderstandings but now take on a new, sinister meaning. She realizes that everything, from her dependent position in their business to how he controlled their life together, was part of his plan. Lisa decides she needs more information to confront Jonathan. She digs into his financial records and finds hidden accounts opened in her name but used by Jonathan for his schemes. He had been using this money to manipulate both her and the business they built together. At this moment, Lisa realizes that everything she believed to be her life was a lie, meticulously planned by Jonathan from the start of their relationship. Now it's clear to her that she was never an equal partner in their marriage. She was merely a pawn in his elaborate game, and Emma was the final link in the chain of destruction Jonathan had left behind. Lisa prepares for the final step. She gathers all the evidence she has found and decides that it's time to act. The evening in Lisa and Jonathan's house begins calmly, but tension fills the air. Lisa hasn't slept properly for weeks, tormented by nightmares, fears, and a constant sense of threat. After gathering all the evidence of Jonathan and Emma's betrayal, she knows she has no other choice. She has to put an end to it. She decides to have one final conversation to get answers to all her questions and invites Jonathan and Emma to meet. Emma arrives first. Lisa looks at her, feeling a mixture of rage and bitterness. The young woman still tries to be friendly, acting as if nothing has happened. A few minutes later, Jonathan walks in. Lisa forces herself to stay calm, but her inner tension grows with every passing second. She tries to start the conversation with a direct question. Why? Why did they do this to her family, to her life? The conversation quickly escalates into accusations. Jonathan looks at Lisa with a cold smirk. His mocking tone only fuels the fire. He says that Lisa was always just a convenient cover for him, a part of his game, and that she was never strong enough to keep him. He calls her weak, saying she never knew how to control herself and that she depended on him both financially and emotionally. Emma remains silent at first, but then she joins the conversation, trying to defend Jonathan. She says their relationship was real, that she always loved him, and that Lisa was to blame for everything that happened. These words become the final straw for Lisa. Emma's remarks, combined with Jonathan's insults, make her feel like everything around her is falling apart. Her inner tension reaches its breaking point. In a moment of extreme emotional breakdown, Lisa rises from her chair and heads to the kitchen. Her movements are swift and decisive. Her mind is flooded with images of their betrayal. Nights spent behind her back, secret conversations, deceitful smiles. She grabs a knife from the kitchen table and returns to the room where the argument continues. Jonathan notices her with the knife and tries to stop her with words, but it's too late. Lisa rushes at him in a fit of rage. He tries to defend himself, but she strikes him hard in the chest. Blood quickly stains his shirt, and he collapses to the floor. It all happens too fast for Emma, who is paralyzed in shock, unable to move. Emma finally comes to her senses and tries to run, but Lisa grabs her by the arm. Madness burns in Lisa's eyes. Her thoughts are no longer guided by logic. Everything has become a tangled mess of fear, fury, and pain. Lisa sees Emma as the embodiment of everything that has destroyed her life. They struggle, and in a haze of confusion, Lisa accidentally delivers a fatal blow to Emma. Emma falls, and within seconds, her life fades away. Lisa stares at her lifeless body, realizing she has just taken not only her husband's life, but also that of her niece, the person she once protected and loved like her own child. The house is filled with a haunting silence. Lisa stands among the two bodies, unable to believe what she has just done. Early the next morning, as silence once again envelopes the house, the police arrive. They respond to a call from the neighbors who heard screams and sounds of a struggle. When the officers enter the home, they are met with a horrifying scene. Lisa sitting on the floor in the living room, her gaze blank and unfocused. Next to her on the floor are the lifeless bodies of Jonathan and Emma, with signs of struggle still visible. Lisa looks lost. She doesn't resist as she's taken into custody. Her hands are covered in blood, and her face is emotionless. The police can't get any coherent explanations from her. She seems locked in her own world, not fully comprehending what has happened. During the initial interrogations, Lisa remains in a state of shock. Investigators begin to piece together the full story. They uncover evidence proving that Jonathan led a double life. His messages with Emma, mysterious transactions, recorded conversations, all point to the fact that he had been manipulating women for years, including Lisa. It turns out he had affairs with multiple women, each of whom was part of his game. Lisa's family is left in total shock. Her brother, Emma's father, is speechless over what has happened. He knew his daughter had always been unstable, but he never imagined she would be drawn into such a tragedy. He blames himself for not being able to protect his daughter, but at the same time, he can't forgive Lisa for what she did. This tragedy destroys their family relationships for good. Over the following weeks, Lisa undergoes a psychiatric evaluation, her mental state assessed by experts. Although she acted in a state of emotional turmoil during the murders, her actions can't be fully justified. Her lawyer tries to argue that the long-term psychological pressure and manipulation by Jonathan pushed Lisa to a nervous breakdown. The trial captures the public's attention, and the details of the case become a central topic in the news. The story of how a man manipulated multiple women, including his wife and niece, shocks many. The details of his double life and his emotional games with people spark widespread discussions. Locals share their opinions. Some sympathize with Lisa, seeing her as a victim of manipulation, while others condemn her for the extreme measures she took. Lisa finds herself in a prison cell, haunted by memories. Every day, she replays the moments in her mind that led her to the fatal outcome. She recalls how it all started with small suspicions, how her mind gradually sank deeper into a fog of fear and paranoia. She asks herself, could she have stopped it earlier? Could she have saved her family if she had seen the truth sooner? Now Lisa is alone, trapped not only in a prison cell but in her own mind. The tragedy destroyed not only her life, but also the lives of those she once loved.